The storm over Manhattan wasn't just weather, it was an omen. Inside Lenox Hill Hospital, the sterile hum of machines mixed with thunder that rattled the glass. Grace Whitman, 7 months pregnant, rubbed her belly as she waited for her routine fetal stress test. Her eyes were swollen from sleepless nights, her wedding ring loose on her thin fingers. The phone on the side table buzzed. One message. From her husband. Adrian Lane. She's with me now. Don't wait up. Shaw. For a full second, the words didn't register. Then her pulse spiked. The monitor beeped faster, matching the storm outside. Grace froze, whispering, "No, that can't be right." But before she could dial back, the elevator doors slid open with a metallic sigh. 2 women stepped out. Harper Lane, Adrian's sister, all polished arrogance in a beige Dior coat, and Vanessa Cole, the PR assistant everyone whispered about at company galas. Harper's smirk could slice glass. Vanessa trailed behind her, holding a gift bag with the gold initials A+V embossed. "Well," Harper began, her voice sugar and venom, "you're still here. I told Adrian you'd cause a scene. You nurses love drama." Grace tried to stand, clutching her stomach. "You can't be here. This is a medical area." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Relax, sweetheart. We just came to deliver the message." She pulled out a diamond bracelet from the bag, Grace's own bracelet, and tossed it onto the hospital bed. He said, "You won't be needing this anymore." The fetal monitor screamed. Grace gasped, stumbling backward. Harper stepped closer, her perfume thick and suffocating. "You think being pregnant makes you untouchable? You're nothing without our name." Grace's hand trembled on the call button. "Please, just leave." Harper grabbed her wrist. "You'll leave first." The struggle was brief but brutal. A clatter of trays, a crash of instruments. The fetal monitor wailed like a siren. A nurse burst in, shouting for security. Vanessa's laughter echoed down the hallway. "Careful, Harper," she teased. "Wouldn't want to scuff those Dior heels on her blood." Grace fell hard against the metal rail, the oxygen tube snapping loose. Her vision blurred, white lights, red panic, thunder outside shaking everything. The baby wasn't moving. Somewhere distant, a nurse's voice screamed for an OB. Then, a faint sound, a heartbeat. Weak but there. Grace reached for the monitor screen, whispering through tears, "Please, hold on, baby, hold on." Security finally arrived, but Harper was already shoving a thick envelope into the supervisor's hand. "Handle this quietly," she hissed. Vanessa leaned over Grace, her eyes cold and victorious. "You should have known your place." The next lightning flash burned their silhouettes into Grace's memory. Harper's grin, Vanessa's diamonds, her own trembling hands. Outside, the rain turned to hail, hammering the windows. Inside, a single monitor light blinked, steady, defiant, alive. And in that moment, Grace swore the night would not end like this. Because somewhere in Manhattan, 3 men were about to find out what had been done to their sister. Grace woke to a dull ache in her ribs and the cold sting of antiseptic in the air. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was steady, but her wrists were restrained against the bed rails. "It's just precaution," the night nurse said, not meeting her eyes. The nurse's badge read H. Miller, but something about her stiff tone made Grace's stomach twist. "Where's my baby?" Grace rasped. "In the NICU. Stable for now. Rest," the nurse replied curtly, adjusting the drip. Grace caught sight of her reflection in the dark window, a pale woman with tangled hair and tear-streaked cheeks. Her hospital gown was stained faintly pink. She tried to move, but the cuff dug into her skin. Then the door opened. Harper Lane swept in like she owned the place. Her Dior coat was spotless, her lipstick perfect. 2 men in suits followed. "Grace," she said softly, "you've caused such chaos. Doctors say you became hysterical and threw yourself into equipment. You could have hurt your own baby." "That's a lie." Grace's voice cracked. "You attacked me, both of you." Harper sighed. "You really should think before you speak. The hospital report's already filed. The cameras in that corridor. Accidentally corrupted. And your husband has already authorized your psychiatric evaluation." Grace's heart pounded. "He what?" One of the men, a hospital administrator, judging by his badge, slid a clipboard toward her. "Mrs. Lane, given your condition and emotional distress, We recommend temporary psychiatric observation. You'll be transferred to Serenity Ward in the morning. Just sign here." Grace stared at the paper. The words voluntary evaluation blurred through her tears. "I won't sign." Harper's smile sharpened. "Then we'll make it involuntary." She leaned in, voice low. "Listen carefully. You're nobody, Grace. You married up, but you'll leave with nothing. Adrian already filed for divorce. You'll lose the baby if you're declared unstable. So be smart. Cooperate." Grace's throat closed. You can't do this." Harper glanced at the nurse. "Make sure she's sedated. She's combative." "Sue." The nurse hesitated only a second before injecting the syringe into Grace's fore. The world tilted. Colors faded. But even as her eyelids drooped, Grace saw Harper whisper something to the administrator and slip him an envelope. Money. Silence. Power. In the hallway, faint voices filtered through the haze. "PR will spin it. Husband says she's been depressed since pregnancy. Doctor will sign off." "Easy." Grace's chest heaved. She tried to reach the call button, but her limbs were heavy. Somewhere deep inside, she heard the faint sound of her baby's monitor from the next room. The tiny beeps were uneven, fading. Her lips moved soundlessly. "Hold on, baby. Please." Then a flicker of movement at the doorway. A young face, wide eyes, a trembling lip. The intern from earlier, Lily, stood frozen as Harper swept past her. Lily's gaze locked on Grace, on the restraints, on the IV bag still half full. Their eyes met for a heartbeat before Harper barked, "What are you staring at? Go. Send her." Lily fled down the corridor, but not before whispering under her breath, "I'll fix this." Grace's vision dimmed. Somewhere above, thunder cracked again over the city. When she finally slipped into darkness, she heard Harper's heels click away, followed by the administrator's voice. "Everything's handled, Miss Lane. She'll be transferred before dawn." But Dawn had other plans. Because one text, one shaky video clip, was already leaving that hospital, and it was heading straight to her brother's. The clock on the wall blinked 3:07 a.m. when Grace's eyes snapped open. Her throat was dry, her arm ached where the IV had been. The sedative fog had lifted just enough for panic to set in. The door to her room was slightly ajar. She could hear the low murmur of voices in the hallway. Harper's voice among them, calm, confident, buying her silence one signature at a time. Through the narrow crack, Grace saw Lily, the young intern from earlier, slip back inside. Her ponytail was half undone, her hands shaking. "Mrs. Whitman," she whispered, using Grace's maiden name on purpose. "You have to get up. They're moving you to psych eval before sunrise. Once you're there, you'll disappear. You won't even get to see your baby again." Grace's heart stuttered. "My baby." "Still stable," Lily said quickly. "But they'll take him out of your custody once the report's filed. You need to go. Now." Grace tried to sit up, but the world tilted. Lily helped her remove the IV, wincing at the hiss of air escaping. "I can't walk," Grace whispered. "Yes, you can." Lily grabbed a hospital blanket, wrapped it around her shoulders, and shoved a pair of paper slippers into her hands. "There's a maintenance elevator by the back stairs. I'll distract security." Grace hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" "Because my mom lost everything to people like them," Lily said softly. "And I can't watch it happen again." She pressed a burner phone into Grace's palm. "Number 1 is your brother Mason. Call when you're out." The hallway lights flickered. The storm outside slammed rain against the windows, drowning out the sound of their footsteps. Grace shuffled behind Lily down a corridor that smelled of bleach and betrayal. They passed a nurse's station, empty. Somewhere down the hall, a janitor's radio hummed Sinatra's "That's Life." At the maintenance door, Lily swiped a card key. "Go down to the basement. There's a service exit. Don't stop." Grace squeezed her hand. "You saved me." Lily blinked back tears. "Save yourself now." Grace stepped into the elevator. As the doors slid shut, she caught one last glimpse of Lily walking calmly toward Harper's direction. The brave kind of calm that got people fired. Or worse. When the doors opened again, Grace stepped into the cold hum of the basement. Pipes rattled overhead. The exit sign glowed red like an omen. She stumbled out into the alley behind Lenox Hill just as lightning split the sky. Rain drenched her instantly, plastering her hospital gown to her skin. She dialed the first number on the phone. It rang once. "Mason Whitman." Her voice broke. "Mason, it's Grace. Sue." There was silence. Then the sound of something heavy dropping. Maybe a glass. Maybe his heart. "Where are you?" "The hospital. They're trying to commit me. Please, stay where you are." "I'm coming. Right now." The line went dead. 10 minutes later, headlights cut through the downpour, a black Mercedes Maybach sliding to the curb. Mason stepped out, drenched, his tailored suit clinging to his frame. He didn't speak. He just lifted her into the car like she weighed nothing. "Cole's calling the lawyers. Ethan's tracking the hospital transfer orders," he said quietly, pressing a warm blanket around her. Grace began to sob. "They hurt me, Mason. They hurt the baby." He looked straight ahead, his jaw tight. "Then we hurt them back. Legally, publicly, permanently." As the car pulled onto Park Avenue, Grace looked through the fogged window. The city shimmered, cruel, magnificent, unknowing. And somewhere above, lightning flashed again, carving 3 initials into the storm: MW, CW, EW. Her brothers were coming home. By dawn, the rain had washed Manhattan in silver. The streets were quiet except for the hum of tires on wet asphalt as Mason's Maybach pulled into the private garage of the Ritz-Carlton. Inside a penthouse suite, Grace lay wrapped in clean sheets while a private OB checked her vitals. The doctor whispered, "The baby's strong, Mrs. Whitman. You're lucky someone got you out when they did." Grace nodded faintly, eyes hollow. "He's all I have left." Outside the bedroom, Mason was already on his phone, voice cold, clipped. "Cole, freeze everything tied to Adrian Lane. Every account. Every shell." On speaker, Cole's tone carried the calm of a man who made empires tremble. "Already ahead of you. The idiot left digital fingerprints all over his Cayman setup. But he's smart, he's moved." "Moved where?" Mason asked. "To disappear." Cole replied, "He's gone off-grid." Ethan's voice joined in from another line, the background noise of Wall Street tickers echoing faintly. "I traced a wire transfer from Adrian's holding company to a luxury realtor in the Bahamas. He's running before the scandal breaks." Mason's jaw tightened, not without paying for what he did. When Grace finally emerged from the bedroom, wearing a hotel robe far too big for her, Mason turned down the lights. "You're safe now," he said softly. She sank onto the couch, her fingers tracing the soft leather. "Safe doesn't feel real anymore." Ethan handed her a mug of tea. "Tell us everything, Grace, from the beginning." She hesitated, staring into the steaming cup. "Adrian changed after the pregnancy. Cold. Controlling. He said he was stressed about work. Then Harper started managing our finances. She told me it was temporary. I trusted her." "Toba." Cole scribbled notes on his iPad, each word a bullet in a future courtroom. "He made you sign anything?" Grace nodded. "A few updates to our insurance and property titles." "He said it was for tax reasons." Mason cursed under his breath. "Those weren't updates, those were traps." Ethan opened his laptop. "You're not listed as a beneficiary on his primary policy anymore." Grace's breath hitched. He erased me?" "Not erased," Cole said grimly. "Replaced." He turned the screen toward her. Vanessa's name gleamed on the digital file. Grace stared at it, disbelief giving way to fury. He was planning to start a new life with her. "Until she realizes he never loved her either," Mason muttered. That afternoon, Mason's security head, Dean, arrived with a flash drive. "We pulled security footage from Lenox Hill. Harper bribed an administrator, but someone leaked an unedited copy." Mason inserted the drive. The video played Harper's slap, Vanessa's shove, Grace's fall. The audio was faint but clear enough to catch Harper's hissed words. "You'll leave with nothing." Cole's expression hardened. "This isn't domestic drama anymore. It's assault, coercion, and conspiracy." Ethan added quietly, "And that means leverage." Mason looked at his sister, pale, shaking, but unbroken. "Grace, you have to decide. Do we go public, or do we crush them silently?" She met his gaze. "Both. I want the world to know what they did. and I want them to lose everything they built on my pain." For a moment, the room was silent, except for the hum of rain against the windows. Then Mason stood, straightened his jacket, and said, "Then we start tonight." Down in the hotel lobby, a suited courier waited with an envelope marked emergency injunction. Cole had already drafted it. Ethan watched stock tickers flash red as Lane Holdings began to tumble. Somewhere across the city, in a dark penthouse, Adrian Lane poured himself a drink and stared at his muted phone. He didn't yet know it, but every secret he'd buried was already being unearthed. And his wife, the woman he thought too fragile to fight back, had just declared war. At 8:43 a.m., a phone buzzed in the social media department of Manhattan Confidential, a popular gossip page with nearly 10 million followers. The message read, "Tip video from Lenox Hill. Pregnant nurse attacked by socialite and her lover. Don't mention names yet." Attached was the clip Lily had uploaded at dawn. 22 blurry seconds of chaos, shouting, and a woman in a hospital gown falling against metal rails. By noon, the post had 500,000 views. By 3 p.m., every phone in Manhattan was buzzing. At the Ritz-Carlton suite, Mason watched the screen with quiet fury. "They released it," he muttered. "Without context, without facts." Grace stared at the video, her face pale. "They'll think I'm crazy. They'll say I provoked them." Cole paced beside the window overlooking Central Park. "Not if we frame it right. We control the narrative now." Mason turned to their PR strategist, Olivia Marks, a former journalist turned crisis fixer. She wore glasses, a calm smile, and the energy of someone who'd seen careers die online. "We can't name them yet," Olivia said, tapping her MacBook. "But we can start a conversation." "Man Stan." "What kind of conversation?" Grace asked. Olivia typed fast, her voice steady. "Mothers deserve protection. Medical workers deserve safety. Compassion first, details later. If we post that from a verified foundation account, the public will rally to empathy, not gossip." Within minutes, Olivia crafted the message. Every mother deserves safety, even behind hospital walls. Violence against pregnant women is never justified. Number protector number. No excuse for abuse. 1. They posted it from the Whitman Foundation's official page. The reaction was immediate. Thousands of nurses, doctors, and women shared it, many adding their own stories. Hashtags trended within an hour. Grace's phone buzzed with notifications. Strangers offering support. Media outlets requesting interviews. But as empathy bloomed, venom struck back. Harper's PR team released a statement of their own, accusing Grace of emotional instability and hinting at a long history of self-harm. They leaked snippets of her medical chart, confidential records Harper had stolen through her contacts at the hospital. By evening, two narratives were colliding online. The victimized nurse versus the unstable wife. Grace sank onto the couch, tears streaming. "I can't win. They have everything. Money, lawyers, connections." Mason kneeled before her, gripping her hands. "They don't have the truth. That's what they'll never own." Ethan looked up from his laptop, eyes glinting. "And they don't have reach. I just bought $10,000 of ad time for our post. It'll hit every major city by morning." Cole added, "And I subpoenaed Lenox Hill for the full security feed. Once we get the real footage, we'll end this." Grace looked between her brothers, the protectors she'd once thought she'd never need. "What if Adrian fights back harder?" Mason's tone was pure steel. "Then we hit back smarter." Lyman. Across town, in a dim penthouse, Adrian stared at his iPad, watching the hashtags climb. Vanessa lounged beside him, sipping champagne. "They're painting her as a hero," she sneered. Adrian's jaw flexed. "Then we'll destroy the hero narrative." He called Harper. "Leak the psychiatric note. The old one. Make sure it looks recent." Within hours, a document appeared online. A forged evaluation claiming Grace had been severely depressed and prone to hysteria. The timing was perfect, just as the evening news covered her story. At the Ritz, Mason slammed his phone. "They forged a damn medical file." Olivia looked up from her laptop, eyes cold. "Then we go nuclear. Tomorrow morning, We released the second video. The uncut one. Grace hesitated. You mean the footage of Harper pushing me? Olivia nodded. Exactly that. Cole's lips curved into a grim smile. Let them drown in their own lies. Drew. As the rain returned over Manhattan, the city's skyline glittered like a battlefield. And for the first time, the war wasn't just personal. It was public. By midnight, Number Justice for Grace had reached 1 million mentions. And the world had chosen its side. By sunrise, the story had gone global. Cable news anchors debated the mystery of the Manhattan hospital attack. Tabloids flashed screenshots of Grace crying on the hospital floor, and Twitter burned with rumors. Half the city saw her as a survivor. The other half whispered she was mentally unstable. At 9 a.m., in a glass-walled conference room on the 52nd floor of Lane Holdings, Adrian Lane adjusted his cufflinks and watched the chaos unfold on a muted TV. Behind him, Harper paced in 5-inch heels, her calm cracking. Vanessa sat at the end of the table, scrolling through comments that called her a homewrecker. Adrian finally spoke. We're losing control of the story. Farzind? Harper snapped. Your wife turned into a media saint overnight. You should have handled her before this went public. She's not my wife anymore, Adrian said coldly, pouring coffee from a Tiffany blue pot. And I'll handle it now. Vanessa leaned forward, voice trembling but sly. Then let me speak publicly. I'll tell them she attacked me first. We'll release photos of my bruises fake, of course, but no one will know. Harper smirked. Good idea. Sympathy sells. Win. Adrian stared out the window toward Central Park. No. We need precision, not drama. We'll countersue. Defamation, emotional distress, medical endangerment, the works. The company's general counsel cleared his throat. Sir, there's a complication. The Whitman brothers, Mason, Cole, Ethan, they've filed an injunction freezing your offshore assets. Grace's lawyers just served notice of assault and fraud. Adrian turned slowly. They what? Effective immediately, the counsel said. You can't move company funds. If you do, it's contempt. Harper's voice rose. They can't do that. It's her word against ours. Not anymore, the lawyer replied. There's video evidence. The uncut hospital footage. Vanessa gasped. They wouldn't dare release it. Adrian set down his coffee. Oh, they will. And that's why we'll destroy it first. He gestured for everyone to sit. Here's how we'll play this. Harper, contact the hospital board. Offer them a philanthropic donation in exchange for confidentiality. Vanessa, you'll do an exclusive interview, soft lighting, tears, redemption arc. And me? He smirked. I'll make Grace look like an ungrateful gold digger who turned on her own husband after stealing millions. Vanessa frowned. But she didn't steal anything. Adrian's tone dropped to a whisper. She will. Once we make it look that way. Bye. Across town, in the Ritz suite, Grace sat with Mason, Cole, and Ethan as they reviewed the hospital's official response. Lenox Hill had issued a vague statement about a misunderstanding between family members. No apology. No accountability. Cole slammed the document onto the table. They're protecting Harper. Someone's been paid. Mason's jaw tightened. Then we cut their funding pipeline. Ethan typed rapidly on his MacBook Pro, eyes glinting. Already on it. I'm shorting Lane Holdings stock and pushing rumors about internal instability. That'll freeze investor confidence. Grace frowned. Won't that hurt his employees? Collateral damage, Ethan said simply. We'll make it up later with our foundation. Meanwhile, Harper was on a private call with the hospital board chairman, offering a donation package worth $2 million. We just want peace, she purred. Erase the footage, and no one needs to know about the breach of confidentiality. Chen. But the chairman hesitated. Miss Lane, there's a problem. Someone already made a backup of the footage. It's on a private cloud. Password protected under an anonymous whistleblower tag. Harper froze. Who? He sighed. We don't know. But it's been accessed twice. Last IP pinged from the Upper East Side. The line went dead. Back at the Ritz, Mason's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. A single line appeared. They're trying to bury the truth. I won't let them. Ver. Grace's breath caught. Lily. Mason looked at her. Then we have an ally inside. Cole leaned back, smiling for the first time in days. Good. Let's make sure the world hears her. Across the skyline, storm clouds gathered again. Not from weather, but from power. Because this wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was war. 3 days after the viral explosion, Grace's name was on every screen from Times Square billboards to late-night talk shows. Some called her brave. Others called her delusional. Mason's team kept her off the internet completely. No interviews, no statements, just silence. But silence has a cost. On the 4th morning, a delivery arrived at the Ritz-Carlton, a white Tiffany box, no return address. Inside lay a single pearl earring and a note. We both lost something. Maybe it's time we talk. We. Vanessa Cole. Cole immediately frowned. It's bait. Don't answer. But Grace's fingers trembled as she turned the note over. She knows something. Harper and Adrian used her. I saw it in her face that night. Mason's tone was firm. You're not meeting her. That woman set you up. Grace looked up, eyes tired but resolute. Then let me set her up back. Ethan grinned. Now you sound like a Whitman. That evening, dressed in plain jeans and a hoodie, Grace slipped into a small cafe in Soho called the Copper Mug. The smell of espresso filled the air, masking her anxiety. Vanessa was already there. Sunglasses on, nerves fraying beneath a flawless coat. You came? Vanessa said, sliding a latte across the table. I wasn't sure you would. Say what you came to say, Grace replied. Vanessa leaned in. Adrian's panicking. Harper's covering for him. But they're fighting. He's hiding money through his father's trust. Cayman, Zurich, Panama. I can prove it. Grace's pulse quickened. Why tell me? Because he promised me everything. The house, the company, the baby. Then he sent me a fake ultrasound photo and told me to play my part. He never loved me. He used me to destroy you. Grace's face hardened. You think this makes you a victim? Vanessa flinched. No, it makes me dangerous to him. I have all the files. She slid a flash drive across the table. That's proof of his offshore accounts and Harper's bribery trail. Take it, and you can end him. Grace hesitated. Why give it to me? Because I'm next, Vanessa whispered. He's planning to pin everything on me when the SEC starts sniffing around. Please take it before he deletes everything. Grace reached for the flash drive. At that moment, a blinding flash erupted from outside the window camera shutters. Her stomach dropped. Paparazzi swarmed the glass. Vanessa's lips curved into a perfect smile. Smile for the truth, sweetheart. Grace froze. What did you do? Vanessa stood, tossing her sunglasses onto her hair. Adrian said I could clear my name if I gave them something better. You, meeting me, exchanging evidence looks like collusion. Grace's voice trembled. You set me up again. Vanessa leaned close. Don't hate the player, darling. Hate the game. Security burst through the door. Cameras flashing as Grace stumbled to her feet. The headlines were written before she even left the cafe. Grace Whitman secretly meets lover who exposed her husband. Alliance or betrayal. By the time she returned to the Ritz, Mason was pacing like a caged lion. You went alone? Grace dropped the flash drive onto the table. She gave me this before she betrayed me. Ethan plugged it into his laptop cautiously. Lines of encrypted files filled the screen. It's real, he murmured. Bank records, shell companies, even Harper's offshore payments. Cole exhaled. She tried to destroy you and handed us the weapon that'll destroy them. Grace slumped into a chair, tears welling. Then use it. Mason nodded. We will. But next time, Grace, don't go into the fire alone. Grace met his eyes, voice steady. I already was alone. Now I'm done being scared. Outside, the cafe photo hit every news outlet. Public opinion flipped again. Confusion, betrayal, chaos. But hidden inside that flash drive was the match that would ignite Adrian's empire from within. And this time, it wouldn't be edited. The next 48 hours were a nightmare carved in daylight. By morning, every major outlet in the country had plastered photos of Grace meeting Vanessa at the Copper Mug. Headlines screamed, "Pregnant wife secretly colludes with mistress." The hidden agenda of Grace Whitman. Talk shows debated whether the Billionaire brothers were funding a smear campaign. Grace sat frozen on the couch at the Ritz, baby Liam asleep in a bassinet beside her. The TV blared a commentator saying, "It's hard to tell who's innocent anymore." Cole muted the screen. They flipped the story. Again, Olivia, their PR strategist, tapped frantically at her laptop. "The footage of your hospital assault is now being called rehearsed. They're pushing a conspiracy theory that you staged everything for sympathy." Mason's fist hit the table. "Enough. We dropped the uncut footage today." Grace shook her head weakly. "No, not yet. If we go public now, they'll spin it again. I can't fight another war today." Ethan entered, phone to his ear. "Bad news," he said grimly. "Adrian's legal team just filed for emergency custody of Liam. They're claiming you're unfit due to mental instability and media obsession. The judge hears it in 2 days." Grace's breath hitched. "They want to take my baby?" "Not want." Mason growled, "Plan." Cole's eyes darkened. "We'll stop them, but it'll get ugly. They'll drag everything out: your medical history, your stress, even your miscarriage scare." Grace pressed her palms against her temples, shaking. "I can't breathe. They're turning my life into headlines. My baby's a prop to them." Mason crouched in front of her. "Listen to me. They thrive on chaos. We control what we can. Rest, eat, breathe. We'll handle the rest." That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She stood by the window overlooking Manhattan, watching lightning fork across the skyline. In her reflection, she looked like a ghost of herself, thin, pale, eyes too old for 29. Her phone buzzed with a hidden caller ID. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Grace," Adrian's voice. Cold, steady, almost gentle. "You've made quite a mess." Her spine stiffened. "You did this. Why? I warned you not to fight me. But you never learn." His voice lowered. "Sign the custody agreement, quietly. You'll still get a settlement. Keep your brothers out of it, and I'll stop the smear campaign." Grace's hand trembled. "You're threatening me." "I'm offering you mercy," he replied. "Take it, or watch everything burn, including your family's reputation." The line went dead. Grace stood motionless for a long time before whispering, "Let it burn." So, the next morning, she woke to chaos. A court notice had been delivered overnight. Emergency psychiatric evaluation required before custody hearing. Harper had filed it through an insider at the hospital. Without it, Grace couldn't attend the hearing, meaning Adrian would win by default. Mason stormed into the suite, waving the document. "They're forcing a psych exam tomorrow morning. If you refuse, it's contempt." Olivia exhaled sharply. "This is professional assassination. Once she's declared unstable, everything collapses: custody, credibility, public sympathy." Grace stared at the papers. "Then we show them what unstable looks like." Cole frowned. "Grace." She stood, voice low but steel-edged. "They want to push me into a breakdown? Fine. I'll give them one they can't contain. But afterward, I'll rise, and they'll never see it coming." That night, she walked into Lenox Hill Hospital again, this time flanked by her brothers and a private camera crew. Nurses whispered as she passed. Harper's influence was fading. Whispers replaced obedience. When she reached the psych ward, she smiled faintly at the irony. "Last time I was here, they wanted to bury me," she murmured. Mason looked at her and said, "Then let's make them choke on the dirt they threw." And as flashbulbs outside captured her entrance, Grace whispered to her reflection in the glass door, "You wanted unstable? Watch me break your empire instead." Trident. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for Monday morning, but Grace never made it there. Sunday night, while her brothers strategized in the suite next door, she felt a sudden tightening in her abdomen. At first, she thought it was stress, another panic surge. Then came the pain, sharp, deep, and rhythmic. Her water broke. "Something's wrong?" she gasped, gripping the back of the couch. "It's too soon." Mason burst in, eyes wide. "Call the doctor, now." Joinba. Within minutes, they were racing through Manhattan traffic. The city glowed wet under the rain as the black Mercedes sped toward Lenox Hill, its hazard lights cutting through the night. Grace clutched her belly, whispering prayers to a child who hadn't even been born yet. Inside the hospital, nurses scrambled as she was wheeled straight into labor and delivery. The same corridor, the same beeping machines. DJ Vu wrapped in fear. Harper's ghost still haunted these walls. Cole signed papers. Mason barked orders. Ethan stayed by Grace's side. The OB, Dr. Miller, arrived in scrubs, calm but urgent. "We'll need to perform an emergency C-section. The baby's heart rate is unstable." Grace nodded, tears spilling down her temples. "Do it. Just save him." The bright lights of the operating room burned white against her skin. The air was metallic with sterilizer and electricity. Machines beeped like a countdown. Dr. Miller's voice was steady. "Stay with us, Grace." "Will." She focused on one memory, her mother's voice years ago. "Strength isn't loud, baby. It's the choice to keep breathing when you want to stop." The first incision was made. She felt pressure, pulling, chaos. A siren inside her chest screamed, "Don't let him die." Then everything went black. Outside, Mason paced the hallway, fists clenched. Ethan scrolled financial updates on his phone, but his eyes never moved from the OR door. Cole stood silently, praying under his breath, something none of them had done in years. After what felt like hours, the door swung open. Dr. Miller emerged, mask hanging loose, eyes weary but soft. "She's alive. And the baby, he's breathing." Mason exhaled so hard his knees almost buckled. "Can we see them?" "In recovery soon," the doctor said. "But listen, there's something you need to know." He hesitated. "She went into shock halfway through. We almost lost her. If she'd waited another 10 minutes, Ethan whispered. "She didn't." The three brothers exchanged a look that carried decades of love, guilt, and relief. Mason finally said, "She's never waiting again." Hours later, Grace woke in a dim recovery room. A tiny cry pierced the silence. A nurse smiled, handing her a small bundle wrapped in blue. "He's strong, Mrs. Whitman. Very strong." "Shoda." She looked down and saw him, Liam, impossibly small, his tiny fists clenched as if ready to fight the world that tried to break them. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. "Hi, baby. We made it." Mason entered quietly, holding his phone. "Grace, you need to see this." He played a clip. The security guard who'd once taken Harper's bribe had leaked the full uncut footage to the media hours earlier, while Grace was in surgery. It showed everything. Harper's shove, Vanessa's taunts, Grace's collapse. The world had seen the truth. "Justice for Grace is trending worldwide," Mason said softly. Harper's stock crashed. Adrian's firm froze trading. The city's turning on them. Grace blinked through exhaustion. "The truth came out while I was under." Cole smiled faintly. "Fitting, huh? You fought for life. The truth fought for you." Dr. Miller entered again, checking vitals. "Mother and son are stable," he said warmly. "But no more battles tonight, okay?" Grace brushed her thumb across Liam's tiny hand. "No battles. Just beginnings." Outside the hospital window, dawn bled over Manhattan's skyline. Somewhere below, news trucks gathered, lights flashing, voices rising. But in that room, everything was quiet. Just a mother, a child, and the echo of a promise kept. 3 days after Liam's birth, Grace was strong enough to stand again. The nurses whispered every time she passed the woman who survived the storm. The city outside her window buzzed with curiosity, paparazzi stationed like vultures on the sidewalk below. Numbered "Justice for Grace" had reached over 50 million views, and public sympathy was turning fiercely in her favor. But not everyone celebrated. That morning, Mason received an encrypted message from Adrian's lawyer requesting a peace conference. The email read, "My client seeks reconciliation and will issue a formal apology before the press." Cole's jaw tightened. "An apology from Adrian? That smells like poison." Ethan frowned. "He wants to control the narrative before the court date. Make himself look remorseful. Classic move." Grace sat quietly, nursing Liam, her eyes fixed on the skyline. "I want to hear him," she said finally. "He needs to say it to my face, not to cameras, not to lawyers, to me." Mason hesitated. "Grace, this could be dangerous. I've lived through worse." Ma. The press event was arranged at a small conference room in Lenox Hill Hospital neutral ground, public enough to prevent another ambush. Adrian arrived in a tailored navy suit, holding a bouquet of white roses. His once proud face now carried the strain of scandal. Sleepless eyes, forced humility. Cameras clicked as he approached Grace. "Grace," he began, voice trembling just enough to sound believable. "I'm here to take responsibility. I let anger and pride destroy everything we built. You didn't deserve what happened." Grace said nothing. Her brothers stood behind her, silent walls in dark suits. Adrian continued, looking toward the cameras. "The world saw a moment that doesn't reflect who I am. I failed as a husband, but I hope to become a better man, a better father." Grace's head snapped up. "Father?" The reporters stirred. Mason's eyes narrowed. Adrian smiled faintly. "Yes, our son deserves to know both his parents. I've already filed for joint custody under new legal counsel. Today's apology isn't just for the public, it's the beginning of forgiveness." Grace's pulse pounded. "Forgiveness isn't ownership," she said sharply. "You don't get to rewrite what you did because a camera's rolling." Adrian's jaw flexed, but his tone stayed smooth. "I'm trying to make peace, Grace. Peace." She stepped forward, every word like a blade. "Peace doesn't come from lies." Pun. Cole pulled out his phone and connected it to the projector. "You want peace?" he said evenly. "Let's show everyone what that looks like." The room dimmed as a video flickered onto the screen. Harper's voice, venomous and clear, saying, "You'll leave with nothing." Then Vanessa's laughter. Then the shove. The entire 20 seconds that Adrian had claimed didn't exist. Reporters gasped. Adrian's face drained of color. This is edited." Ethan interrupted. "No, Adrian. This is Exhibit A. Straight from the hospital's cloud archive, verified by the state attorney's office." Harper, who had been seated quietly in the back, stood abruptly. "This meeting is over." But Grace wasn't finished. She turned to Adrian. "You came here to save your image, but you just buried it." A reporter shouted, "Mrs. Whitman, do you accept his apology?" Grace looked into the cameras. "I don't accept apologies meant for headlines. I accept accountability." So, security escorted Harper and Adrian out amid chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes exploded. Grace didn't flinch. As the doors closed, Mason leaned toward her. "You just ended him." Grace whispered, "No, I just ended the lie." Outside, the apology video spread online faster than Adrian could react. Viewers replayed his collapse beside the damning footage. Sponsors withdrew within hours. Lane Holdings stock plummeted another 22%. Back in her hospital room, Grace cradled Liam, watching the rain streak the window. The world finally believed her, but victory didn't feel sweet. It felt quiet, heavy, and real. She kissed her baby's forehead. "We don't need his apology," she murmured. "We have the truth." And for the first time, truth was louder than power. 2 days after Adrian's public humiliation, Manhattan woke to breaking news. Federal auditors had raided Lane Holdings. The screen on every CAF TV flickered with flashing headlines. Financial fraud allegations surface against Adrian Lane's company. The footage from the hospital had sparked more than sympathy. It had triggered a full investigation. Mason watched the broadcast from the Ritz suite, coffee untouched. "They're done," he said flatly. Cole scanned through documents on his iPad. Not quite. Harper's still controlling the family accounts. She's moving money through campaign donations and charity shells. Grace sat nearby, rocking Liam gently. "She'll never stop until someone stops her." Ethan looked up. "Then let's make sure she trips on her own lies." Meanwhile, across town, Harper Lane's penthouse in Tribeca was in chaos. Assistants packed boxes. Phones rang without pause. Harper, once the image of composure, stood at her glass desk, mascara smudged, laptop glowing with numbers that no longer added up. "Move the money," she hissed to her accountant over speakerphone. "All of it. Before the IRS freezes my accounts." "Mom, the freeze is already in effect," he stammered. "Your Cayman account was flagged at 3 a.m. We can't move a cent." Harper's breath hitched. "Who authorized that?" He hesitated. "A federal subpoena, backed by evidence from Cole Whitman." She slammed the laptop shut, glass shattering on the floor. That bastard. Daunt. In the next room, Vanessa sat curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Her glossy facade was gone, her eyes red from crying. It's over, Harper. They're hunting us both. Harper spun on her. You started this with your fake pregnancy stunt. Vanessa shot back, voice trembling. You told me to. You said it'd make the press pity Adrian. Harper's laugh was sharp and bitter. And you actually believed I'd share his world with you. Vanessa Rose, face palais. I'm not going down for your family's crimes. What are you talking about? I recorded everything. Harper froze. Vanessa pulled a small voice recorder from her bag, her hands shaking. Every call, every order, every time you told Adrian to silence Grace. The feds will pay for proof. Maybe they'll even protect me. Harper's expression cracked into something wild. You think you can betray me and walk out? Vanessa backed away, fumbling for her purse. I'm done being your weapon, Harper. 1. Before Harper could reach her, Vanessa bolted for the elevator. Doors closed. Silence. Minutes later, Harper's phone buzzed with an email alert, an encrypted file upload titled, "For the DA's office." Her hands shook as she opened it. Every conversation, every bribe, every manipulation, sent to prosecutors. Her empire was gone. By sunset, FBI agents were waiting outside her penthouse. Cameras swarmed as Harper Lane, the queen of Manhattan's elite, was escorted out in handcuffs. She still wore pearls, still kept her chin high, but her eyes were empty. News anchors replayed the footage on loop. The sister behind the scandal has been arrested for conspiracy, obstruction, and financial fraud. At the Ritz, Grace held Liam close, her heart aching, not for Harper's fall, but for what power had turned her into. She used to be human, Grace whispered. Mason stood beside her. Power doesn't change people, Grace. It reveals who they already were. 1. Cole received a text from the district attorney. Charges confirmed. Court date pending. Ethan smiled grimly. 1 down. Grace looked toward the skyline, lights blinking like faint stars over the Hudson. And 1 to go. Across the city, in a holding cell, Harper sat under flickering fluorescent lights. A single tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered to no one. It wasn't supposed to end like this, but it had. Rain swept across the Manhattan skyline again, streaking the windows of the Ritz-Carlton suite, where Grace sat feeding Liam. The television murmured in the background. Endless coverage of Harper's arrest, the fall of Lane Holdings, and Adrian's pending indictment. But Grace's mind wasn't on the news. She kept thinking of the anonymous text Mason had received the week before. They're trying to bury the truth. I won't let them. L. Win. Whoever this L is, Cole said, flipping through legal briefs, they're the reason the footage leaked. Without them, the investigation would still be buried under Harper's money. Mason nodded. Find them, quietly. 2 hours later, Olivia, their PR strategist, entered the suite with a knowing look. You're not going to believe who L is, she said. It's Lily Hargrove, the intern from Lenox Hill, the one who helped Grace escape. Bon. Grace froze, remembering the terrified young woman who'd whispered, You'll disappear if you don't go now. Where is she? Grace asked. Olivia hesitated. That's the problem. She's gone. Packed her things, quit the hospital, vanished 3 days after Harper's arrest. Cole frowned. Maybe she's hiding. Whistleblowers get threats all the time. Or worse, Mason said darkly. Someone silenced her. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She scrolled through her phone, rereading old texts from the hospital, most deleted, some fragments left. Then she found one unsent message draft from Lily's old number. Just 3 words. Check the folder. Grace's pulse quickened. She searched her email. Then her old cloud drive. Hidden in a locked archive was a folder titled Serenity Ward, the very ward Harper had tried to transfer her into. Inside were scanned files, audio logs, schedules, payment receipts. One recording caught her breath. Harper's voice, calm and chilling. Transfer her under Psych Code 401. Once she's in Serenity, she won't see daylight again. Cole, Mason, and Ethan gathered around her screen, silent as the recording played. She kept evidence of everything, Cole murmured. She was building a case. Ethan's jaw tightened, and someone realized it. They decided to track the IP address that last accessed the folder. It led to a public library computer in Queens, an unlikely location for someone hiding. But when Mason's security team arrived, they found a small envelope taped under the desk. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. For Grace. The truth costs everything. Cole plugged it into his laptop, tension thick in the air. Video files opened footage of hospital administrators signing off bribes, Harper's assistant delivering cash-filled envelopes, and one final clip that made Grace's stomach twist. Adrian himself, inside his office, speaking on a recorded Zoom call. If the wife becomes too visible, we'll use the mental health angle again. Sympathy dies fast when she looks unstable. Grace covered her mouth, tears of disbelief welling. He planned it. From the start. Mason exhaled slowly. That file alone will end him. Olivia called moments later, voice breathless. I just got word. The DA's office received the same drive anonymously this morning. They're reopening the assault case with criminal charges. Against Adrian? Grace asked. And the hospital board, Olivia confirmed. This changes everything. Grace stood by the window, watching lightning split over the East River. Somewhere out there, Lily was hiding, or gone. But she'd given Grace something more valuable than safety. She'd given her proof. Grace whispered to the night. I'll finish what you started, Lily. Cole nodded. We'll make her name known. She'll never be another silenced woman. In the distance, sirens wailed. Not of fear this time, but of justice on its way. And in that moment, Grace realized something profound. She wasn't fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every woman who'd been told to stay quiet. The courthouse on Center Street looked like something out of a war movie that morning. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting, barricades lined with fans holding signs, reading number, Stand with Grace, and number, Mothers Deserve Justice. Inside, the marble halls echoed with tension. For the first time, Grace Whitman was not a nurse, not a victim, not a wife. She was the woman who would take down Adrian Lane. Cole straightened his tie beside her. Remember, he murmured, truth doesn't need volume, just clarity. Grace nodded, her heart pounding in rhythm with the baby's soft coos from the back room, where a trusted nurse cared for Liam. Mason and Ethan sat at her sides like sentinels in suits, faces hard, eyes locked forward. Across the aisle, Adrian entered with his new legal team, 3 men in $1,000 suits, and the arrogance to match. He looked thinner, paler, but still composed. He gave Grace a practiced, remorseful smile that almost fooled the cameras. Almost. Judge Brennan, a woman known for her zero-tolerance courtroom, took the bench. We are here for the matter of Grace Whitman versus Adrian Lane. Civil and criminal assault combined with obstruction and financial fraud. Her gavel struck once. Proceed. Cole rose first, his voice steady as stone. Your Honor, this case is not about wealth. It's about control. A man who believed he could erase a woman's reality because he owned the walls around her. So, he played the first clip, Harper's recorded voice. Transfer her under Psych Code 401. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Then came the second, Adrian's own voice from Lily's drive. If the wife becomes too visible, we'll use the mental health angle again. Grace's hands shook as she watched him on the screen, her husband, calm, calculating, planning her downfall like a business strategy. Adrian's lawyer objected, illegally obtained evidence. Judge Brennan raised an eyebrow. Overruled. The whistleblower provided this through the DA's office. It's admissible, Cole continued. The defense will claim this was a marriage dispute. But no marriage gives a man the right to weaponize the mental health system, to bribe a hospital, to endanger an unborn child. He paused, letting the silence breathe. Grace Whitman didn't just survive. She exposed an entire network of corruption. And we will prove it. When it was Adrian's turn, his lawyer put on a show. Mr. Lane regrets his actions deeply. He was under extreme stress, manipulated by his sister and an employee. Employee? Grace muttered, half rising. Mason's hand steadied her shoulder. Adrian stood to speak, his voice dripping with false humility. Grace, I loved you. I lost control. But this spectacle, this isn't justice. It's revenge. Cole shot back. Then let's ask the evidence about revenge. He displayed bank transfers showing bribes to hospital staff, payments to Harper, offshore accounts tied to shell companies. The gallery gasped. Grace finally rose, calm but fierce. You talk about love, Adrian. Love doesn't come with hospital handcuffs or forged psych papers. Love doesn't shove a pregnant woman into a wall. Adrian snapped, losing his composure. You ruined me. You and your brothers. Judge Brennan's gavel slammed. Order. But it was too late. His outburst had shown everything. The verdict came hours later, but the city already knew. The jury deliberated for only 39 minutes. Guilty on all counts: assault, obstruction, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Adrian froze. Cameras flashed like lightning. Grace exhaled, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Mason wrapped an arm around her as Cole shook the prosecutor's hand. Ethan whispered, "It's over." But Grace shook her head softly. Not over. Finally right. 10. As Adrian was led away in handcuffs, she turned once, not out of pity, but closure. He looked at her with the same arrogance that once controlled her life. Now it was powerless. Outside, when the reporters shouted, "Grace, what's next for you?" she smiled faintly. Living. The crowd erupted in applause. For the first time in years, Grace stepped into sunlight not as someone broken, but as someone free. The morning after the verdict, the sun rose gold over Manhattan, serene, almost mocking. The city had already moved on to the next headline, but inside the Whitman offices on Park Avenue, a quiet storm brewed. Mason stood by the window, staring down at the streets below, coffee untouched. "It's time," he said softly. Ethan looked up from his laptop. "You're sure you want to liquidate everything tied to Adrian's name?" "Yes," Mason replied. "Every asset, every holding, every company he used to hide money. I want his empire reduced to dust." Cole, flipping through a stack of documents, nodded. "We've got court approval to seize and auction all luxury assets tied to Lane Holdings and Harper's Shell corporations. The DA wants proceeds directed to victim compensation funds." Grace entered quietly, holding baby Liam. She looked fragile, but there was a new steadiness in her eyes. "If it's about revenge, don't bother," she said. "If it's about rebuilding something better, then do it." Mason turned to her. "It's about closure." By noon, the first auction began at Sotheby's, Harper's jewelry, Adrian's art collection, his Montauk estate, even the Fifth Avenue penthouse, where Grace once dreamed of family dinners. The air smelled of polished marble and quiet judgment. Wealthy buyers whispered bids while journalists scribbled notes. Grace didn't attend. She watched from the suite with Liam in her arms, the TV broadcasting live coverage. On screen, a reporter announced, "All proceeds from today's auctions will fund the Liam Grant for Maternal Safety, a foundation named after Grace Whitman's newborn son." Her throat tightened. "You named it after him," she whispered. Cole smiled faintly. "Ethan's idea. You gave birth to the truth, Grace. It's only right the next generation benefits from it." Meanwhile, the auctioneer raised the hammer. Next item, Lot 56, a 1,920 Patek Philippe pocket watch, engraved, "To my future." It had been Adrian's wedding gift to her. The crowd murmured. Mason, seated anonymously in the back, raised his paddle. The auctioneer smiled. "Sold for $1. He didn't keep it." He placed the watch on the courthouse steps later that evening, wrapped in white ribbon, with a handwritten note. Past returned, future reclaimed. As more headlines rolled out, Grace's foundation website went live. Donations poured in from around the world: nurses, mothers, survivors, even strangers who saw themselves in her story. Within 24 hours, the fund had raised $8.3 million. Across the river in Brooklyn, Adrian watched the coverage from his holding cell, face pale under flickering fluorescent light. Every tick of the clock echoed like punishment. His lawyer whispered, "They're dismantling everything you built." Adrian's voice cracked. "Everything I built?" He looked at the wall, at the man in the reflection, empty, powerless. "No, everything she survived. At the Ritz." Grace sat surrounded by flowers sent by supporters. "They keep calling me brave," she murmured. but I was terrified every second. Mason answered, "Courage isn't the absence of fear, Grace. It's moving through it." Later that evening, Olivia entered with papers. The final asset transfers complete. The auction's done. After fees, the foundation receives $38 million. Grace covered her mouth, stunned. 38. Ethan chuckled. That's what karma pays when you let it mature. For the first time in months, Grace laughed, a soft, unguarded sound that filled the room. Liam stirred, smiling in his sleep, as if he understood. Mason raised his glass of sparkling water. To starting over, and to never letting darkness own another woman's story. Va, Cole added, to the truth. The one thing that can't be auctioned or erased. Grace looked out at the skyline glowing over Central Park. To peace, she whispered. And for once, it wasn't a wish, it was real. Spring drifted softly over Manhattan, washing the city in sunlight and fresh blooms. For the first time in a year, Grace Whitman woke to silence, not sirens, not news alerts, not whispered pity, just the rhythmic breathing of her baby, Liam, asleep beside her in his crib. The war was over. The foundation was thriving. Adrian and Harper were behind bars. But the victory felt strangely hollow. She spent her mornings volunteering at Lenox Hill, not in uniform, but as a counselor for nurses and mothers who had endured abuse. It's strange, she told Olivia one afternoon over coffee. You win everything you thought you wanted, and it still doesn't feel like peace. Olivia smiled gently. Peace isn't a prize, Grace. It's practice. Mine. That night, Grace was walking Liam through Central Park when she ran into Dr. Andrew Miller, the neonatologist who'd saved her son during the emergency C-section. He was out for a jog, hair damp with rain, eyes kind but cautious. Grace, he greeted, slowing to a stop. You look lighter. She laughed softly. That's what happens when you stop carrying the weight of other people's sins. He smiled. How's the little warrior? Liam cooed, as if answering for himself. They began walking together, their footsteps quiet on the damp path. I've been following your foundation, Andrew said. You're changing lives, Grace. You took tragedy and made it useful. Grace shook her head. It was never just me. My brothers, they fought the fire I couldn't. Andrew's eyes softened. And now they get to rest knowing you survived it. They reached a small bridge overlooking the lake, the skyline glittering beyond. Grace leaned on the railing, the cool metal grounding her. I used to think healing meant forgetting, she said. Now I think it means remembering without bleeding. Andrew hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver ring, simple and unpolished. This isn't about forgetting, he said quietly. It's about starting again, with someone who knows where you've been. Grace froze. Andrew, he smiled nervously. Not a proposal, not yet. Just a promise. Dinner, coffee, a walk. Something normal. You deserve normal. Her throat tightened. I don't even know if I remember what normal feels like. Then let me remind you. They laughed softly, the moment breaking open like sunrise. Grace took the ring, turned it between her fingers. It wasn't extravagant. No diamonds, no Cartier box, just warmth. That evening, she returned to the suite, where Mason was reviewing foundation plans. He asked me out, she said, still holding the ring. Mason looked up, pretending to frown. The doctor? Dr. Miller. He set down his pen, smiling for real this time. About damn time someone saw you for more than your scars. Ethan called from across the room. If he breaks her heart, we bankrupt his hospital. Grace laughed, rolling her eyes. Can't I have one normal man without a hostile takeover attached? Cole raised a glass of sparkling water. You? Never. But maybe this one won't need defending. Pie? Later that night, Grace stood by Liam's crib, watching him dream. She slipped Andrew's simple silver ring onto her finger, not as a claim, but as a reminder. Love didn't have to hurt. It could whisper instead of roar. Outside, the city lights shimmered off the Hudson, reflecting the quiet rebirth of a woman who had once been buried under headlines. Grace whispered to her son, maybe healing doesn't end with justice. Maybe it begins with kindness. The baby stirred, smiling in his sleep. And for the first time, Grace believed her own words. It was a gray Tuesday morning when Harper Lane's sentencing filled every news channel in New York. Courtroom sketches, splashed across the screen, showed her in a beige prison jumpsuit, instead of the tailored Dior she'd once used as armor. Grace sat in her townhouse living room, Liam on her lap, watching in silence, as the woman who'd tried to destroy her faced the judgment she could no longer buy her way out of. "Me, Lane," the judge said sternly on screen, "you are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and financial fraud." The gavel struck once, echoing like thunder. Across the courtroom feed, Harper didn't flinch. She simply lifted her chin, expression unreadable. But when Grace looked closer past the polished defiance, she saw the cracks. The once formidable sister who had orchestrated power plays now looked smaller, haunted, and lost. Later that afternoon, Mason's phone buzzed. He looked at Grace. "She wants to see you." Grace hesitated. "In prison?" Cole nodded. Her attorney said it's personal. "No press. Just the two of you." Ethan frowned. "You don't owe her a damn thing, Grace." "I know," she said quietly. "But I need to look her in the eye before I close this chapter." 2 days later, Grace entered the visitation room at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. The air smelled of bleach and regret. Harper sat at a metal table, her wrists resting lightly on the surface, no makeup, hair pulled back in a low bun. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. "Grace," Harper began, her voice softer than Grace had ever heard it. "You look stronger." Grace sat opposite her. "And you look real." Harper gave a bitter laugh. "I used to think control was strength. Turns out it was just fear in designer heels." Grace said nothing. Harper's eyes watered. "I envied you. You know, you had what money couldn't buy, people who actually loved you. Mason, Cole, Ethan, even Adrian loved you once. And I." Her voice cracked. "I just wanted to matter." Grace's chest tightened. "You mattered, Harper. You just mistook power for worth." Harper's eyes darted up, glossy with unshed tears. "You hate me?" Grace took a slow breath. "I did. For a long time. But hate's heavy. I'm done carrying things that don't belong to me." Harper swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Grace. For everything. For that night at the hospital. For letting him hurt you. For making you doubt yourself." Grace nodded, her throat burning. "Then say it out loud. Not to me, but to yourself. Because forgiveness isn't mine to give. It's yours to earn." For a moment, Harper seemed to fold in on herself. "I don't know if I can." "Then start small," Grace said softly. "Admit you were wrong. Live differently. That's how healing starts." The guard signaled that time was up. Harper looked at her one last time. "You think I deserve healing?" Grace rose, her hand resting briefly on the table. "Everyone does. Even the ones who tried to destroy it." As she walked out, Harper's quiet sob echoed behind her. Outside the prison gates, the sky had cleared. Mason was waiting by the car, arms crossed. "How was it?" Grace looked toward the horizon. "Necessary," Ethan asked. "Did she apologize?" "She did," Grace said. "But the real apology was seeing who she's become." Play. That night, after putting Liam to bed, Grace wrote in her journal, the same one she'd started during her hospital stay. "Forgiveness doesn't free the guilty, it frees the survivor." And with that sentence, she finally closed the notebook. The next morning, when she looked in the mirror, her reflection didn't carry pain anymore. It carried peace. The city had finally begun to heal from the storm Grace's story had unleashed. Her foundation flourished, the hospital reformed its ethics board, and every media outlet praised the Whitman family for their integrity. But peace never lasted long where Adrian Lane was involved. It began with a letter. A crisp white envelope arrived at the Liam Grant Foundation headquarters, addressed in Adrian's unmistakable handwriting. "To my wife, the truth you refuse to hear." Grace froze when she saw it. The scent of his cologne still clung faintly to the paper, sharp and suffocating. Mason's expression darkened as he took it from her. "We'll have it screened." Cole nodded. "Could be psychological manipulation. Could be legal bait." But Grace shook her head. "No. He wants me to read it. And I will." That night, when Liam had fallen asleep, she sat at her kitchen table under the soft glow of a single lamp and opened the letter. The words slashed across the page in his familiar, arrogant handwriting. You think you've won. You think the world loves you now. But I made you. Without me, you'd still be nobody, a nurse from Queens playing at being a Whitman. She kept reading, pulse steady. The courts took my freedom. Your brothers took my empire. But they'll never take the one thing I built that still matters, the truth. You think you know everything. But there are files your precious coal never found. When they surface, people will see who you really are. At the bottom, a line that chilled her. When I go down, I'm taking you with me. Grace folded the letter calmly, though her hands trembled. He's bluffing, Mason said when she showed him the next morning. Ethan disagreed. He's cornered. Cornered men bite hardest. 2 days later, his threat took shape. A video surfaced on social media. A shaky, dimly lit confession Adrian had recorded before his imprisonment. He claimed Grace had staged her assault to steal his assets, manipulated her brothers, and destroyed his company out of greed. Within hours, hashtags began trending again. Number Grace the manipulator and number false victim. Cole's jaw tightened. He's trying to rewrite history. Olivia rushed in, phone in hand. The video's getting millions of views. News outlets are biting. We need to respond. Mason growled. No statements. We wait. Let him hang himself with his own lies. 1. But then came the real shock. That night, Adrian attempted suicide in prison. A failed overdose that left him alive but paralyzed from the waist down. The media erupted again, painting him as the tragic fallen CEO. Sympathy for him began to creep into the same headlines that once praised Grace. Grace watched from her living room, fury tightening her chest. He's turning himself into a victim. Cole looked at her gravely. We could release the unedited hospital files, the full medical reports, the voice recordings. Grace shook her head. No, that would make me him. We win by being who we are, not who he was. Still, something in her eyes hardened. The next morning, she requested permission to visit the prison infirmary. Mason protested. Grace, he's dangerous even now. I know, she said softly. That's why I need to see him. In a cold, sterile room, Adrian Lane lay strapped to a hospital bed, face pale, eyes full of venom. When Grace entered, he smirked faintly. Come to gloat? She looked down at him, the man who'd once made her believe she was nothing. No, she said. I came to tell you something you'll never understand. What's that? She leaned close. You don't get to win by dying, you get to lose by living. His smirk faded. Grace turned to the attending guard. Remove his DNR order. He doesn't get an easy way out. He gets to face everything he built, day after day. Levin prowled. As she walked out, the guards exchanged looks of quiet respect. Outside, the morning sun broke through heavy clouds. Mason waited by the car. What did you do? Grace slid on her sunglasses, voice calm. I let karma do its job. And for once, karma didn't disappoint. 6 months passed. The city had stopped whispering about Grace Whitman and started listening to her instead. Every television network that once chased her downfall now aired her interviews about recovery, motherhood, and the quiet power of survival. Her foundation had expanded nationwide, providing legal aid and shelters for women silenced by wealth and fear. But Grace didn't live for the headlines anymore. She lived for the mornings. For the sound of Liam babbling from his crib, for the smell of coffee brewing while sunlight painted the kitchen gold. For the first time in years, her life wasn't breaking, it was blooming. Still, there were scars beneath the peace. One evening, after a long day at the Foundation's new Midtown office, she sat with Mason, Cole, and Ethan on the rooftop terrace. The skyline shimmered below them. You've rebuilt everything, Grace, Mason said, leaning against the railing. Most people would have disappeared after what you went through. Grace smiled softly. I did disappear, but I decided to come back different. Cole nodded. You didn't just rebuild. You redefined. Ethan grinned. And you made us look like amateurs in PR. She laughed. You all taught me well. Downstairs, a gala was being prepared. Not for the Whitmans, but for the Liam Grant Foundation. Grace had insisted the event be held at the same hotel where she'd once hidden from the world, the Ritz-Carlton. Tonight, it wasn't a fortress. It was a celebration. As twilight deepened, guests began to arrive. Doctors, lawyers, survivors, donors, even city officials. Cameras flashed, but this time, they weren't chasing scandal. They were capturing hope. Backstage, Grace adjusted the simple navy gown she wore. Elegant, unbranded, confident. Olivia approached, holding a tablet with the evening's speech notes. "You ready?" Grace exhaled. "Ready enough." Before she stepped out, Dr. Andrew Miller appeared in the doorway. His presence was calm, grounding. "You look incredible," he said quietly. She smiled. "You say that every time, and I'll keep saying it until you believe it." Grace's expression softened. "Andrew, tonight's about the women, not me." He shook his head. "It's about both. You taught them that strength can rebuild from ashes. That's your legacy." The announcement echoed from the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Grace Whitman." Applause thundered as she walked on stage. Spotlights caught the gentle curve of her smile, the subtle tremor in her hands that she didn't hide. She began, voice steady but tender. 2 years ago, I was lying in a hospital bed, wondering if I'd ever hold my child. I thought my story was over. But sometimes, life rewrites you when you least expect it. She paused, scanning the crowd. Survivors wiping tears. Doctors nodding. Her brothers watching proudly from the front row. "This foundation isn't about revenge," she continued. "It's about reclamation of safety, dignity, and peace. For every woman told she's too weak, too loud, too emotional, this is proof that she's enough." The applause was overwhelming, but Grace raised a hand, smiling through it. Justice isn't just a verdict. It's what comes after. It's the rebuilding. When the speech ended, Andrew joined her on stage, surprising her by taking the microphone. "Grace doesn't know I planned this," he said with a nervous laugh, earning chuckles from the crowd. "But I wanted to remind everyone, healing isn't solitary, it's shared." He turned to her. "You rebuilt more than your life, Grace. You rebuilt ours." Tears welled in her eyes. Later, after the lights dimmed and guests mingled, Grace stepped out onto the terrace for air. Andrew followed, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders. Below them, the city shimmered, not as chaos, but as possibility. She whispered, "For the first time, it feels like home again." He kissed her forehead. "That's because it finally is." And under that quiet Manhattan sky, Grace realized she hadn't just rebuilt her life, she'd reclaimed her soul. The day the city stopped holding its breath for Grace Whitman was the day she chose to breathe again. 1 year had passed since the verdict that ended the Lane Empire, and the world had shifted around her. The tabloids, once obsessed with her tragedy, now called her the nurse who changed New York. Her foundation operated in 6 states. Liam, almost 2 years old, laughed more than he cried. And now, beneath a wide spring sky and the shimmer of the Hudson River, Grace stood in a white satin gown, simple, timeless, her veil catching the wind like a whisper of everything she'd survived. The ceremony was set on a private terrace, overlooking the river, flowers draped along railings, candles flickering in glass cylinders. No media, no flashbulbs, just family, friends, and a string quartet softly playing "Can't Help Falling in Love." Mason walked her down the aisle, his usual stern expression softened. "You sure about this?" he teased quietly. Grace smiled. "For once in my life, completely sure." Cole adjusted his tie in the front row. Ethan was holding Liam, who kept clapping and shouting, "Mama," every few steps. The crowd chuckled. At the altar stood Dr. Andrew Miller, waiting. He wasn't a billionaire or a CEO, just a man who'd stood beside her through every fragile moment after the storm, steady, kind, quietly strong. The man who had never tried to save her, only to see her. When she reached him, Mason kissed her cheek and whispered, "He better deserve you." Andrew smiled. "Every day, I'll try." The minister began the ceremony, the river glinting in sunlight behind them. "Marriage," he said, "isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, the courage to stay, to grow, to rebuild." Grace's eyes filled with tears. Every word felt like it was written for her. When it was her turn to speak, she took a deep breath. There was a time when I thought love was control, and strength was silence. But you, she looked at Andrew, you showed me that love listens, and strength is letting someone in again. You never tried to fix my brokenness. You just sat beside it until it healed. The crowd wiped their eyes. Even Mason coughed suspiciously. Andrew took her hands. Grace, you taught me that real love isn't grand gestures or perfect days. It's the small things, coffee in the morning, a quiet laugh after a long day, holding hope when it's fragile. I don't promise you a life without pain. I promise you one where you'll never face it alone again. When the minister declared, "You may now kiss the bride," the applause that erupted was more than celebration. It was catharsis. Liam squealed from Ethan's arms. "Mama pretty." Everyone laughed as Grace bent down, kissed her son's forehead, then turned back to her husband. The reception glowed with string lights and laughter. Mason gave the first toast. "To Grace," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us that survival is just the first act, and happiness is the sequel." Cole chimed in. "And to Andrew, who somehow made her smile again. Miracles do exist." Grace laughed through tears. "You're all terrible at speeches." Andrew took the mic for one last word. "To family. The kind we're born with, and the kind we choose." As night deepened, fireworks blossomed over the river, reflecting in the water like scattered stars. Grace leaned her head on Andrew's shoulder, whispering, "It doesn't feel like an ending." He smiled. "That's because it isn't. It's chapter 1. From the terrace, the Whitman brothers watched, quiet and content. Mason finally exhaled. "She made it." "We." Cole raised his glass. "No, she rebuilt it." And as the fireworks painted the sky above the Hudson, Grace realized something simple, powerful, and true. The story that once broke her had become the one that set her free. A soft autumn breeze swept through the trees lining Riverside Drive, scattering gold leaves across the cobblestones. 2 years had passed since Grace's wedding, and New York felt different now. Lighter, quieter, as though the city itself had exhaled with her. Grace Whitman Miller stood before the glass windows of the Liam Grant Center for Healing and Advocacy, a towering, sunlit building overlooking the Hudson. The grand opening had drawn hundreds, nurses, survivors, philanthropists, even state officials. A blue banner stretched across the entrance with the words, "Where every voice matters." Cole adjusted the microphone on stage. "You ready, sis?" Grace smiled, smoothing her white blazer. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Tom." Mason handed her a pair of scissors. "You earned this." When she stepped up to the podium, the crowd rose in applause. Cameras flashed, but this time, they didn't feel like weapons. They felt like witnesses. Grace began, her voice calm and sure. 2 years ago, I stood in a hospital hallway, broken, voiceless, terrified. I thought my story ended there. But pain isn't an ending. It's a beginning you don't see coming. Hasn't. The audience listened in stillness, her words cutting through the cool air. "I named this center after my son, Liam," she continued, "because he was born in chaos but raised in peace. He reminded me that life can bloom even in ashes." She looked toward the front row where Andrew held Liam, now a bright-eyed toddler with curls and mischief in his smile. Her heart ached with gratitude. "This center isn't just mine," she said. "It's for the women who couldn't speak, for the nurses who were silenced, for every survivor told she was too small to matter. It's proof that the truth doesn't die. It grows." Applause thundered through the crowd. Grace glanced toward the back of the audience, where a familiar face caught her eye. Lily Hargrove. The young intern stood quietly, smiling through tears. She'd come out of hiding months earlier to testify against the hospital executives and had since joined the foundation as its youngest board member. After the ceremony, Lily approached her. "You did it," she whispered. Grace shook her head gently. "We did it." That evening, as dusk fell over Manhattan, Grace and Andrew took Liam to the rooftop garden of their townhouse. The city lights glittered below like distant stars. "You ever think about the past?" Andrew asked, handing her a mug of tea. "Sometimes," Grace admitted, "but not the pain, just the lessons." He smiled. "What's the biggest one?" She looked out at the skyline. That healing isn't revenge. It's creation. You can't undo what broke you, but you can build something that outlives it. He slipped an arm around her shoulders. You've done that. And you didn't just rebuild yourself. You rebuilt everyone who watched you. Justine? Downstairs, Mason and Cole were sitting with Ethan, laughing about their early mistakes running the foundation. Olivia had joined them, scribbling ideas for the next campaign. For once, the Whitman brothers weren't strategizing, they were living. Grace turned to Andrew, eyes glistening. I used to think survival was enough. But now I know survival is just the first step. He kissed her temple. And what's the next? Legacy. The night deepened. Fireflies flickered over the river, their reflections dancing in the water like tiny miracles. Liam clapped his hands, chasing one that landed on his toy truck. Grace watched him. The living proof that love could bloom from destruction. From somewhere below, the faint sound of church bells echoed across the city. Grace smiled, whispering to the wind, "We made it." Andrew looked at her. "No, Grace, you changed it." "One?" And as she stood there, hand in hand with the man who loved her, watching their son laugh beneath a skyline that had once felt cruel, Grace realized her story had come full circle, not from tragedy to triumph, but from pain to purpose. She didn't just survive the storm. She became the calm after it. Troll. Where? T contentry. You view KNCHLDN. So, that's it. Our story has finally come full circle. And if you're still here, listening all the way to the end, maybe something inside this journey touched you in a way words can't quite explain. Maybe you saw a part of yourself in Grace, in her courage, her pain, her healing. Life isn't about avoiding storms, my friend. It's about learning to dance in the rain, to rebuild even when the world thinks you can't. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The obstacle is the way." And that's what Grace showed us, that every wound can become wisdom, and every ending can be the beginning of something far more powerful. So take a deep breath. Whatever you're carrying right now, know this. You are not broken. You are becoming. And healing is not forgetting. It's remembering who you were before the world told you otherwise. If this story moved you even a little, share it with someone who needs a reminder that strength can be gentle and hope can rise from the darkest places. And hey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because somewhere out there, another heart is waiting to heal right alongside you.